Pirates. Some people love them, some people hate them, but they are going to be an essential part of Star Citizen. Without them, hauling and trading would basically be Space Truck Simulator. There would be no need for the security industry outside of those who venture into Vanduul space. The vast majority of outlaw gameplay would be gone. As some of you might know, I am not a pirate. Pick and Shield is a security organization, which will largely be fighting pirates when it does fight. However, I have been trying to keep up with a project developing a pirate code. Now, this is not a set of laws or anything like that. It's a set of loose guidelines and suggestions for players, organizations, and even CIG as to what pirates are and what they could be or should be, as well as alternatives. For example, Marauders would be the shoot first, questions later type. Now, I had an interview with the head of this project, however that interview was lost due to an OBS crash. However, he recorded answers to some of the questions I asked him and sent them over. I'm just going to kind of lump them in here and hope for the best. I'm hoping to have him on again later, probably at the end of this month or early April, because hopefully 3.1 will be out by then and there will be enough to talk about. And if you are interested, there will be links in the video description to the Discord where this is going down.
What made me come up with the idea to make this code? So I'll answer the first part of the question having to do with the code and then the mechanics part. The piracy code is an ongoing collaborative effort. While I've chaired the initiative from the start and provided guidance along the way, many hundreds of players from the Renegade community and many thousands of hours of collaboration have gone into crafting the latest draft of the piracy code and its accompanying lore categories and game mechanic suggestions. So what got me started with the code? I've been a backer and a pirate for over 2 years now. I played 2.6 and headed up many Spectrum threads, and early on I realized that the pirate community was hated by the majority of the Star Citizen community. The rift between my love for piracy and the majority of Star Citizen who hated piracy compelled me to jump into making some kind of positive change. Plus, my military background taught me never to complain about something without offering a solution to remedy it. So I jumped in and I asked myself, what do these folks actually hate so much? Having their stuff being stolen was the first answer that came. Nobody likes their stuff to be stolen, but this is a game where without the risk of loss, it wouldn't be any fun. And so without pirates to provide the risk, Star Citizen just wouldn't be any fun at all. So in part, the hatred didn't really make total sense. Upon pointing out the opportunity of piracy, many agreed that it was a necessary part of the game, but their hatred still remained. So I knew there was something not uncovered, so I decided to dig deeper. The litany of harassments, insults, and threats I received on Spectrum told me the line between fantasy and reality had somehow been crossed, and that many people were personally offended by the piracy community, which I was proud to be a part of. So why? What was actually happening here? Clearly, the griefing, blowing up of ships, and random killings contributed to the heated feelings, but what made it poker red hot was the verbal harassment, name-calling, and bullying that accompanied the in-game assaults. It's that kind of bullying behavior we see in schoolyards, places of worship, and political rallies where acts of prejudice and hatred drive wedges between people, and it's exactly what's happened with the pirate community in Star Citizen. By getting to know many of the renegades within the community over the last couple of months, however, I came to realize that it was only a small minority that were actually griefing or harassing players. So the majority of us were being hated because of a minority of us. That to me was motivation enough to begin a collaboration around gaining clarity about piracy, what piracy actually is, and hopefully it would turn around the negativity about piracy in the greater Star Citizen community. Okay, next. Now about the reputation mechanics that we submitted to CIG. So it became clear that the reputation and crime stat systems and their rewards and punishments that are going to go along with them were going to be organized within some kind of overarching architecture. Having been a systems designer and enterprise level consultant for Fortune 100s for many years, I'm familiar with the architectures that get put into place prior to systems being divided and created and executed. So I knew there was going to be some kind of overarching architecture. In other words, the degree of restrictions imposed upon players would be commensurate with the severity of their crimes. So, for example, the architecture that we came up with was that griefing, which is on, if you imagine kind of a rainbow and put griefing on the left, griefing would get the harshest punishments, and then next to griefing, as you kind of move up the arc, would be marauders. And why marauders would get a little less punishment than griefers is because griefers KOS just for their own satisfaction to see other people suffer, whereas marauders, it's actually a lore, a gameplay of killing on sight, and it's a valid gameplay, but it does have its downside because anytime you murder someone, there's going to be some crime stat against you. Then third, as you kind of go up the arc, is pirates. And then the difference between marauders and pirates is that pirates will kill, but they will also give a warning first. They'll offer surrender to their victims or their targets before they kill on sight. And that's why marauders would be a little bit less of a severity of crime than marauders, and marauders a little less than grievers. Then next on the arc would be outlaws, and they dabble in all kinds of dark enterprises, but they don't really stick with any one. And then next would be freelancers. So it goes from the most severe to the least severe, and then inside of that arc, of each of those categories, there will be game mechanics that are put into place in order to deal with the rewards and punishments of each of those particular lores. So that's what we mean by this overarching architecture. So the suggestions that we submitted to CIG were along the lines of things like having a Jolly Roger flag, a white one to indicate surrender or we'll kill you and then take your stuff, or a red one, which is we're going to kill you whether you surrender or not. And that would be the difference between marauding and piracy, right? Marauding would be the red flag, piracy would be the white flag. And those kind of basic mechanics in order to define these lore categories is what we saw as really being most fundamental and most important to begin with. Also direct communications with ship captains to let them know that they're about to be raided. Kill on sight auto tracking to record firing sequences. Who fired first? Who fired second? Was it in self-defense? These kinds of things. A Moby-Glass kiosk for transferring cargo to pirate ships, where the pirate leader can negotiate with the target captain on the percentage of cargo that's going to be transferred, and these kinds of things. Ship IDs, for example, and player IDs. So these basic mechanics that we suggested were to help define these lore categories that I previously explained. So the question being the grumblings from the opposition and the fact that I always seem to have a positive face when dealing with them. So what do the critics have to say? The critics have to say plenty. Renegades have an aversion to rules, and no matter how best practices or guidelines are presented, what is inevitably heard is policing, enforcing, restricting, confining, taking freedoms away. And no matter how we presented the statement of intent or the kind of like the overview of the code, it would consistently be interpreted as us trying to lay down a set of laws over other people, which is absolutely totally opposite of what the code is actually about. The word code does not mean rule or law. Code actually means pact, accord, or an alignment or an agreement between parties. So that's very different than having to follow a set of mandates or restrictions. There's also a very dark underbelly, metagaming underbelly in Star Citizen that's bent on dominating the playing field by the use of intimidation, harassment, and character assassination. All those things have been committed against me. None of them have stopped me. These folks are truly sick, and they're a detriment to themselves and to everyone in the Star Citizen community, in my opinion. I've been threatened, mocked, harassed, disrespected repeatedly. And while I've made my share of mistakes and I've kicked the butts of people for having been disrespectful in my Discord and then got a lot of shit for it, I'd do it again if I had it all over to do. I'm undaunted by the grumblings and by the naysayers, and to me, it's actually an essential part of bringing about positive change. If you don't get the negative coming up, you're not doing something that's making a positive difference. So they called the code a sinking ship when some of the larger orgs pulled out, some of which have returned, by the way, and more have returned since then. But the fact that we sailed right into an enthused port of call with CIG and Chris Roberts, they received our submissions with gratitude and with the assurance that our suggestions would be taken seriously by the stakeholders that are involved in the actual programming for the game. So that is called a success, not a failure, my friends. So the next question, how does the code and mechanics benefit the piracy community? There are three main advantages to the piracy code and the accompanying 6 categories and mechanics that we submitted. The first one is that the code defines piracy from griefing and marauding. And that definition between those 3 categories will reduce the penalties to pirates and also boost our profits, because we won't have to be wasting time fighting unnecessary UEE interventions, paying penalties, being shut out of ports of call, the unwillingness on suppliers or refuelers to work with us because of our negative crime stats. So it's going to make a big difference in terms of reducing penalties and boosting our profits. The second thing that the piracy code does in terms of benefit is that it sends a fair play message that will help change how pirates and piracy, and actually all renegade behavior, is viewed by the greater Star Citizen community. Right now, pirates are about 3% of the entire population, which is very, very small. And as I said, the reputation is dismal for pirates. So sending this fair play message about not griefing, not killing for no good reason, giving a warning sign to people, targets before they're raided, all of these things are going to help change the perception of what pirates are and bring more merit and validity to piracy gameplay in Star Citizen. The third benefit has to do with kickstarting working alliances between renegades that will increase our solidarity and our strength against some of our enemies, like the Vandul or the UEE or other major forces that tried to dominate or take away our freedoms in the future. So already we've got 16 organizations and more signing on. There's a lot of collaboration now going on between those organizations, and even the organizations that are still resisting and seeing the code as a set of laws rather than what they are, which is really best practices that benefit everybody. Even the opposition is coming together in their own camps and coming up with ways of working together. And that's all good. It's all positive. So those 3 main advantages, defining piracy from griefing and marauding, the fair play message to the greater Star Citizen community, and kickstarting these working alliances between renegades. The other huge benefit, in my mind, is to clearly define what piracy is, because the clearer we are about what it means to pirate, the better chance we have to change the negative perception of who's out there who's already convinced about who we are. So the clearer we are, the clearer we can have them be. And, the question to ask is really, in terms of piracy lore, what's going to weave us closer together rather than tear us further apart? So, are pirates members of the mafia? Are pirates vampires? Are they assassins? Are we mere thieves? What defines us from griefers? What defines us from those who just kill on sight for no reason other than notoriety or wanting to be badasses in the verse? The biggest contribution, I believe, is to clarify piracy from griefing and marauding. So again, griefers enjoy making others suffer. Marauders kill on sight and do whatever they damn well please. Pirates, however, value profit over killing and destruction. So the vast majority of 17th and 18th century pirates raised the Jolly Roger to give their targets the option to surrender or die. And that is what piracy is going to be known for if those who've signed on to the code with me have anything to say about it in the future. So next question. What are some of the weirder suggestions you've had around the code? And I guess the strangest suggestion I've heard was to leave the game mechanics to CIG and just take whatever we get. Because CIG encouraged us to submit our suggestions to them, it sent a clear message that they wanted to consider ideas before they dialed in the rep and crime stat systems. We have a place at the table with CIG as the result of the work that we've all done. And we also have Chris Roberts on board, who's expressed enthusiasm for our collaboration. So honestly, was it the wrong thing to do? I don't think so. And neither do the organizations who've signed on with us and made this positive outcome happen. Next question is, how much effort has gone into this? Do you have any future plans for the piracy community outside of being a pirate? Well, like I said, thousands of hours and countless contributions have gone into crafting the piracy code and the 6 lore categories and mechanics that accompany it. It's gone through so many iterations, and we have an aligned and steady growing piracy community that will keep polishing it, adjusting it, and developing it in ways that both maximize our freedom as renegades and at the same time provide us with a guiding star, an inner guiding star of self-regulation that will help both ensure fair and fun gameplay for everybody. As far as future plans go, yes, now that we've succeeded in contributing our piracy suggestions to CIG and to Chris Roberts, I'd like to spearhead plans for colonizing Libertalia, which means liberty in Greek, and it's a clandestine piracy base of operations where like-minded pirates can dock their vessels and work together on truly epic raids that yield monumental profits. And I know those are already plans for Spider and some of the other outlying colonies. We're thinking of something that's clandestine, that nobody knows about, and working with those pirates who see the value of the piracy code and actually realize that the categories between griefing, marauding, and piracy are important, and they're going to maintain those distinctions. So really that's it. I want to thank you for the interview. It's helped me be able to get some of these basic ideas out there. I hope that what I've shared will help clarify for those who've been on the fence about whether they're going to sign on to the code or not. I hope it reinforces those who've already signed on, because it is a risk that they did so. There's certainly repercussions that can come from this kind of taking a stand for this kind of positive change. Those who are opposed, I hope that you at least can respect what we're doing and refrain from adding any hot poker kind of threats or disrespect that would actually make the situation worse. So thank you everybody for listening. I look forward to the next part of this process. Take care.